Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So we are going to start something a little different. It's not going to be every week, but for a while, we are going to have a series of discussions. And it's going to be a discussion about the kings of Israel. Well, I say kings of Israel, but it'll actually be the kings of Israel and Judea. We'll come back to that point more in just a second. We see in tomorrow's Haftarah, the special Haftarah chosen for the day before Rosh Chodesh, where we talk about King Saul, who was king at the time, and David, not yet king, but soon to be. And it is sometimes hard to remember that in addition to their own personalities, their stories, their narratives, their own ethical choices and failures, that the Tanakh itself, the Bible, has its own rubric for judging the royalty of our people. And that rubric is not exactly the same that we would all pick. If I were going to ask you in general, how would you judge the quality of a king? What sort of criteria might you suggest as a benchmark for kingliness?
Compassion and empathy.
Compassion and empathy. Is this a person who is compassionate, empathetic? Do they understand the needs of the community? Are they a fair shofet, a fair judge for their community? And indeed, we see many scenes of Solomon and others giving judgment for the people. And indeed, Absalom, one of David's sons, tries to overthrow his father. There is a little coup, and does so on the idea that his father is not hearing the needs of all of the people. So clearly, this seems rather important. Other criteria that you might suggest?
Strength of being able to guide the community.
Strength of being able to guide the community. Guide them where? We're not going anywhere. It's not like Moses and we have a destination. What sort of decision making do they need to guide us in?
In fair, equitable laws. And
So to give good laws as needed for the people when they need a law or the situation to be dealt with in some fair and equitable way. Handling things like commerce. Handling things like the fair taxation of the people. Would these be good examples?
yes. I think
Okay.
so.
Excellent, and indeed, we see examples precisely of those questions and the struggle to do the right thing in many of those situations. No one's labeling the number one thing that for most of history gets somebody with the appellation the Great after the name. Why did Alexander get called the Great? Why did Peter get called the
Warrior.
Great? What's that?
Warrior.
War! They conquer things, right? They kick some tuchus. And indeed, within the Tanakh itself, we do see the people, at the very least, praising the military prowess of both Saul and David. David more so, which doesn't make Saul very happy. But overall, none of these are the actual benchmark that the Tanakh itself uses.
They talk of Solomon becomes one of the great kings, but they say because of peace, not war, though.
Solomon as well is indeed a king that is meant to be of peace, although ironically he firms up the rule of the Davidic kingdom over its small empire at the time. And then with his diplomacy, he tries to maintain its strength, although that diplomacy, often involving marrying other women, tends to come back and bite him in the rear.
And the war prevents David from building a temple, too.
That's a whole nother conversation, because there's actually a couple of different reasons why David may not have built a temple. That's the most famous of the list.
His observation of Torah and his relationship with the God of Israel.
Okay. So let's get down to brass tacks. When the Tanakh is measuring the kings, there are two criteria. Yes, the Tanakh obviously wants us to learn more about each king than just these two things, but when the Tanakh gives its summary statement of good king, bad king, there are two different metrics. This is the rubric the Tanakh uses. One, did they do what was right in the sight of God? And that generally means, were they loyal to God? Were they observant of the mitzvot? Were they a generally righteous person in and of themselves? And then, number two, did they help guide the people to be the same? Did they get rid of idol worship, tear down the altars under the leafy trees, get rid of all of the prophets of the false gods, and ensure that there was loyalty to God and to Torah in order to bring the community together and all of us towards God? That's it. Those are the two benchmarks that the Tanakh uses. How many of our kings score 100% on both of those? Well, basically none. How many of them at least get a passing grade on both of those?
3?
About 3.5, depending upon what you want to do with Solomon. Hezekiah and Josiah, two that we'll talk about in the future, and David basically get a passing grade on both of those points. And Solomon kind of eats it out with inertia because by the end of his life, he's really not doing so well. But on balance, the early part of his career balances out the rest, and he kind of gets a passing grade on both. But unfortunately, the rest of them, no one else. Out of all of the other kings, no one else gets a passing grade on both marks. We get some in the southern kingdom of Judah that get a passing grade on point 1, that they personally are righteous, they personally are good, they personally are loyal to God, but they still mess up on part 2. That is to say, they don't lead the community. They do not shepherd the community the way a king is meant to shepherd. And in the northern kingdom of Israel,
It's worse.
0. No one does a good job. Some of them are useful for a while. Some of them have moments that we'll talk about of kind of edging in the right direction, but all of them, when it comes time for the report cards, and apology to students and teachers in the room, none of them get a passing grade on those two measures. Now, this isn't because God is a hard grader. This is because it is hard to be a king, and it is hard to be a good king. It is hard to be a king personally because being a king, being a personally good person while you are king, is exceptionally challenging. As we have seen in country after country and era after era, the old adage holds true: power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And indeed, this is the problem with Saul, who gets a little big for his britches and is no longer loyal to what God has commanded him, and so God seeks a replacement, which ends up being David. That it is hard when you are king to realize that God is still over you and you are still bound by the laws that God gave, even as you are making additional laws for the good of the community in the more secular civil matters. And secondarily, it is harder still, even if you are a good king, even if you are good for yourself, even if you are trying to do what is right, it is hard to remember that your ultimate job is to shepherd the nation. That you are not there just for your own personal journey, your own personal piety, or definitely not your own personal aggrandizement, but you are there solely in order that the people will have this assistance from the kingdom in order to help guide them towards goodness and away from evil. It is difficult for kings who are either weak or seeking popularity or who feel they need the wishes, the well-wishing of all of the segments of the population, even those that are corrupt and terrible, in order to carry out their other agendas. It is difficult for them to guide the people. As we'll see, Hezekiah, Josiah, David are the exemplars of trying to make this work, although they each have their own hiccups as well. And from the other kings, we will learn additional lessons about the struggle of trying to rise up towards God, from whether you are king or whether you are in the lower strata of the population. But ultimately, we will learn more than just the governance of our people. We will learn the governance of ourselves. So stay tuned. We will talk more about this, but you've all got the introductory paragraph, so you'll be ahead of the class. And that means I'm sure you'll all score 100%.